broken Kanu's way, and Dahui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?
Hello Arsenal fans, welcome back to a new episode of Can You Believe It, an Arsenal podcast. And I'm coming to you after a defeat against Manchester City. Not a result that was too surprising, but it's our 11th defeat of the season in the Premier League. It's a sobering feeling because even though Manchester City are miles ahead of us and their depth and their squad is so much better than us, I think these games are just very depressing because we just never really lay a glove on them. And the worst thing as a fan is to have no hope during a game. Sometimes games can go bad, sometimes games can go wrong, but I think when you start a game and you get into half time and then you get to full time and you felt no hope during the game, then it sort of speaks to you really about where your team is at, but also how just a sombering feeling it can be these games. And I've always felt it against Man City at home. I mean, Man City in general, to be honest. Apart from those FA Cup games, these games are never competitive, and yesterday really showed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've sort of waffled on during the intro. So let's get into the team lineup. So, like I said after the Benfica game, I expected some rotation in this game, and to be honest, we got it. So, Bernd Leno was still in goal. That was to be expected. Bellerin at right back, again, to be expected. A central defensive partnership change, so Rob Holding and Pablo Mari both came in. I don't think both of them had a good game at all. Kieran Tierney returned at left back, which was a really welcome sight. Xhaka kept his place, but he was partnered by Mohamed El Neni in midfield. And then the front four was tweaked a bit. So Aubameyang still stayed up front and Odegaard still stayed at 10. But Saka went to the left with Nicolas Pepe on the right. So that was the team lineup. For me, I expected rotation. The bigger game is Thursday, is the Europa League game against Benfica, the return leg. I expected some rotation. I was happy to see Smith Rowe get a rest. I was happy to see Ceballos get a rest because these were players that we're going to need on Thursday that are better than the counterparts that replaced them. I was disappointed that Saka didn't get a rest and Martinelli didn't play because I think Saka was the one that you really wanted to have a rest because effectively he's our best player this season. But no rest for him, no rest for Saka. He played the whole 90. So did Aubameyang as well, which was surprising because I thought Lacazette would have come in for him as well. So it was just a bit of there was some rotation, but not for exactly the players I like. Now, of course, Arteta and the staff know the players much better than I do, but I think just because Arsenal fans are so cautious about Bukayo Saka because we've seen Wilshere, Ramsey in the past who are young players with such promising talent, but then their careers be affected by injury. So they need to maybe think about giving Saka a rest because he has played just so much football. But anyway, let's get into the game. And we started very poorly, but Man City started very well. They were sensational for the first 35 minutes, I would say. And they scored very early, within 2 minutes. I predicted on Twitter that they would score within 5 minutes, so I guess I should have bet on that with actual money. But it was poor defending from us all round. Tierney looked a bit off at the start, and he doesn't close Mahrez down. Mahrez puts across, and a very small Raheem Sterling manages to head above Rob Holding and score within 3 minutes for Manchester City. At this point, you're just thinking, well, it's going to be a drubbing, isn't it? It's going to be 3-4-0 Man City, and that will be that. And there wasn't really anything that notable that happened after that. City created a few more chances. I mean, they had 6 total shots, but only 2 on target. The defence seemed very easily bypassed in this game, but we were sloppy as well. Obviously, it's expected to be sloppy because Manchester City are an incredibly good pressing side. They are incredibly intelligent. But I think we just showed them a bit too much respect in the early stages and didn't really go after them as much as we've seen us go after teams in the last few months. But the last 10 minutes was encouraging. We at least had some attempts at goal. I think there was a really good cross from, I think it was Tierney, and he crossed it. He was trying to find Odegaard in the centre, but if he crossed it near post, Aubameyang had made a really good run. So I think the wrong cross, and it just sort of suited our sloppiness all game. We were sloppy throughout the game, and we didn't really have a control of the game at all. We didn't really have an incredible chance. To go in 1-0 down at half-time was pretty kind to us. City could have been 2-3-0 up. But when you're down 1-0 at half-time, then you have to really go for them in the second half. There's a chance still. But we just never did that in the second half. I think in the second half, we had 0 shots on target. We just wasn't really that good. And we just showed City too much respect, and City didn't really do anything. There was a really good chance for João Cancelo in the second half where he sat down Pablo Mari, but he shot wide. It was a really good effort. But we just never really got into the game. We never looked like we were going to score. I'm pretty sure we could still be playing now and Arsenal wouldn't have scored. We just showed them too much respect. We also waited a bit too late to make changes. So in the 73rd minute, we made the first 2 changes, which was Alexandre Lacazette for Martin Odegaard and Emile Smith-Rowe for Nicolas Pepe. So Smith-Rowe went at number 10, Aubameyang went out to the left, and Saka went on the right to see if we could create that combination that we've seen recently. But we didn't really do anything. The changes were too late and they weren't notable at all. And then David Luiz had to come on for Rob Holding, who had a concussion injury. So this was one of our concussion substitutes. Now, I must say, this is obviously a very encouraging thing that the Premier League are trying out. This is something that should have been brought in quite a long time ago. I know in rugby and in cricket, these are things that happen, and concussion substitutes should have been in football for a while, especially since you head the ball quite a lot. But I'm glad it's finally been brought in. So David Luiz came on, which allowed us to have an extra sub, which we used to bring on Danny Spios for El Neni. But again, those subs didn't really make a difference, and the game just finished with a whimper at 1-0 to City. And I think very similar to the City away game, we showed them way too much respect. But the difference between that game and this game is City were much worse in that game in terms of form, in terms of confidence, and we didn't really go at them. Now, you can say that we wasn't in really good form either. I think we had just come back off a defeat against Liverpool away. So, yes, we weren't in the best form. But in this game, City were obviously on the back of a 17-win streak. But we still showed them too much respect. We just didn't really commit to scoring a goal. Like I said in that City review earlier in the season, I think we were just focusing on not getting embarrassed rather than focusing on trying to get a goal and trying to get a result. And I think that is one of the things that I can criticise Mikel Arteta for, is that sometimes he is a bit too cautious. I think that was something that Emery was criticised for as well. So it's only fair that I criticise Mikel Arteta as well. Now, obviously, there's the flip side that if Arsenal do concede another 2 goals, then they're going to be called naive and whatever. But it just seemed like we didn't really have a chance at them, and it was poor, and I was disappointed at the end of the game. But it's fine. Sometimes it can happen. After that result, we have now lost 11 games in the Premier League. We lie slap bang in the middle of the table at 10th. We are 2 points behind Spurs and Villa, but both of them have a game in hand. Well, Villa have 2 games in hand on us. And we are only 1 point above Wolves, 2 points above Leeds, who have a game in hand on us. So we could eventually go down to 11th. We've lost 11 games, like I said, and we are as far off from 4th as we are from Fulham. Well, there's 1 point difference in between it, but we are pretty far off. We've lost the exact same amount of games as Fulham this season. So it has been a poor season, and I think a lot of people recognise that. I mean, we've lost 3 in our last 5 games. We've only won once in that time, and that was against Leeds. So it is pretty disheartening this season, and for me, the blame will not go to the period after Christmas, because at least that looked like something of coherent football. I can accept that Arsenal are not going to win every single game, and that it's going to be a roller coaster, this rebuild. But what I couldn't accept was the stupid decisions we were making before Christmas. For example, the Willian decision to sign him was one that I criticised a lot, because I just didn't think we needed him, and also the length of the deal I didn't think was justifiable. But he joined, and yes, I can complain as much as you want, but the club went with that decision, fine. But they made it seem like Willian would be playing number 10, but then we started the season and Arsenal weren't playing without number 10, even though we knew that in the summer that creativity was probably our biggest problem. I remember the Villa away game last year where they scored very early and we proceeded to create nothing. And that continued to the start of this season as well. Apart from the first day of the season and Fulham aside, we created nothing in those few months. We were having 3 shots on target a game. And that's what's cost us our season, really. Yes, I understand that maybe the period after Christmas has been blown out of proportion. That, yes, we played well against Wolves, but we still lost that game. We played decently, if not unspectacular, against Aston Villa. But again, we still lost. But the reason why I'm so annoyed about earlier in the season is because there were things that the team needed and everyone could see that they needed, and we didn't address them until it was too late. Arsenal can lose games. I'm totally okay with that, because I know that Arsenal are where they are at the moment. And that's not me saying that I'm happy about Arsenal losing. I'm not. Don't get me wrong at all. I want Arsenal to win every single game that's possible. But I'm also realistic that I know that Arsenal are not going to win every single game possible. That there are a number of teams that are better than us going forward. But we didn't help ourselves. We knew we had an issue in the summer and we didn't solve it until it was too late. Now, we didn't even target that kind of player in the summer. You can say Aouar was that type of player, But it wasn't until it was too late, when we were really in bad form, that we decided we needed a creative player. And it wasn't really until the introduction of Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka going out on the right and basically going nuts that we really had this change of form and this change of system. And the reason why me and a lot of other people were a bit more encouraged about it is because at least you can see some green shoots of progress. And that's what I think Arsenal fans ask for, is that they just can see progress. I don't mind if the short term is bad, but if the long term is eventually good. But what I fear sometimes is that these games prove that we are still very naive and we are still very cautious and we are just going to get nowhere near them. And yes, I understand Man City are an incredible team. They're miles ahead of us. Yes, I get that. But I'm just concerned because on Thursday night, if Arsenal do end up losing that game, and touch wood they don't, then that's the end of our season. We're not going to finish in the top 6, so European football is pretty much in the balance. The only way we're going to get European football is by winning the Europa League. So if we go out on Thursday with us being in 10th and then also having no chance of getting any European football at all, then serious questions will be asked of the manager. Now, I don't think he will be sacked. And personally, I don't think he's done enough to be sacked, in terms of we knew that this was going to be a long process. And yes, he's done poorly. Yes, Unai Emery, Arsene Wenger both lost their jobs for less than what Mikel Arteta has done. But we accepted that this wasn't going to take a year, that this was going to take a couple of years, and that if you could see green shoots of improvement, that the fan base would allow Mikel Arteta and the team time. Now, if Arsenal go back to the way they were performing in November, then yes, by all means, sack him, find someone else. I'm sure we would improve. But I see at least a way forward. And hopefully, if we continue to play this way, that we will start improving and we will start getting more results and start at least building something for next season. Because for me, that's the important thing. Yes, everyone wants to win the Europa League, and trust me, I'm desperate for Arsenal to win a European trophy, because it is the one trophy alongside the League Cup that I've never seen Arsenal win. But the League Cup is not relevant. I want to see us win a European trophy. But the league form and the way you do in the league is how you're interpreted by fans and interpreted by players. You could win a Europa League but finish 10th and players would still not look at you as a real serious club. But it is difficult for me personally, because I like Arteta, I like what he says. I think the system's improved, but results are king, and Thursday is massive now. It will either make or break Arteta's season, and to be honest, that's going to be the conversation after every single Europa League game. And unless he wins every single Europa League game, he has a mountain to face, because he's going to probably finish with, I'd say, 15 defeats in the league and finish with no European football. And I understand that this season is weird, obviously, with COVID and stuff. I mean, you've got West Ham and stuff in the top 4. You've got Everton doing really well, Leicester being second. COVID and no fans has definitely affected the game. And this season's been weird. I mean, Liverpool are not even in the top 4 at the moment. But that shouldn't excuse that if we finish 11th or 12th, that there will be legitimate questions asked about the manager. And that's so unfortunate, because I think in August we were all loving the manager. And now it's a lot of people have turned against him, and it's a shame. Now, I'm not going to turn against the manager, because I think his performances can be mixed, but at least I see something that I can at least pin my hope on. And that's what you want to do as a fan, is at least have some hope about your team. Because if you don't have any hope about your team, then what's the point? What's the point of following them all season if you're just going to finish mid-table? If you don't think that Arsenal are looking good, that the run that we've been on has been overrated, fine. I'm not going to disagree with you. But for me, I have hope that we've seen some green shoots to build on next season. And that's what I'm going to continue hoping until it gets worse, and then we can have the manager discussion again. In terms of performances, there was none really that I can talk about that were really good. I thought Xhaka worked really hard on the day, but I also thought he was quite sloppy on the ball. So there's a bit of hit and miss there. Saka again looked very good on the right, but obviously when you're playing that calibre of opposition and no one else is really performing that well, then it's difficult to really shine out. But he done well in the limited amount of possession we had. Right, so some listener questions. I got asked a lot this week, because I think even though the performance and the game in general wasn't really that entertaining and wasn't really anything to write home about, there were actually a lot of questions about the team performance. But I'll start on a more positive note from @BillyJohnson101. And he asks, how encouraging a performance was that in terms of the shape of the side, especially going forward? And is Saka's best role coming in off the left as an inverted forward, or coming in off the right with a diagonal cross box run? So I think the start of the question is something I saw. A lot of people were saying it was an encouraging performance because at least we worked hard, at least we didn't fall 3-0 down. I still don't think it was a really good performance. I think those things that people were stating are the bare minimum of what we should be expecting. And I understand that we are miles off them, and that a 1-0 defeat is not the worst in terms of where we are and where they are. But we didn't really try. There was nothing really going forward. That we would start going forward, but City are so good at defending this season that they very easily negated it. But during the end of the game, even when we made the subs, we didn't really try at them at all. So it was just a bit of a shame, and I don't really agree it was an encouraging performance in terms of the shape. In terms of Saka's best role, I mean, I think he looks better on the right, because at least when he does that diagonal cross box run, he can score from it. I think with him situated on the left, you're asking him to be a bit more creative, because obviously he has to hit on his stronger side, and you're asking him to be a bit more of a playmaker than get on the end of crosses. I think he looks really balanced on the right-hand side. I prefer him there. He's been terrific in terms of form on that side. I think he should stay there. But I was encouraged that he basically played left mid, but it was more of a left central mid, and I thought he looked great there against Brighton after Project Restart, and he looks good here against a really good opposition. I think he's going to be used in a multiple amount of roles, but I think he should be used at right wing because that is where his performances have been best. That's where he's provided goals and assists. He looks like he's going to score a goal or get an assist every game. And when you have that type of player, you can't move him from that position. It would be tempted to do that, but I wouldn't. He was moved to the left mainly because I think Arteta worried about João Cancelo's forward runs. I mean, he's an incredibly attacking fullback, and I think he used Saka as a more of a defensive fullback in terms of he would work hard and support Tierney. But I think his best position is on the right. But thanks for your question, Billy. So I've got another question from Adelaide_Jeff. Thank you for your question. And they ask, why does Martinelli barely get any game time? I think it's a difficult one. It was one that I answered last week in terms of Martinelli and why he wasn't coming off the bench. I don't know why. He came off the bench against Benfica, but he was pretty ineffective. He came on as a striker in the Benfica game, which what I found interesting. I don't know why he's not being used. Arteta had a bit of a similar issue when it was the end of last season. I think it was just before lockdown because I think Martinelli got injured quite early during lockdown and during Project Restart. So I'm not sure. I don't know why. He speaks very well about Martinelli, but the proof is in the appearances and he seems to be having a hard time getting on the pitch at the moment. So I just got to hope that changes soon because whenever I've seen Martinelli, he's looked very impressive. He looks like a star and we don't have enough stars in our team, so play him. But hopefully he gets some more game time going forward. So I've got a question from @HandOfArteta on Twitter. And he asks, it was mentioned recently Holding was a leader in the dressing room during our turnaround period. What role do you see him playing next season at the club? I think Rob Holding is someone that Mikel Arteta likes. I think he likes his work on the ball. He is very comfortable on the ball. You can see that he has some leadership qualities, but I don't think he's the most active defender. I don't think he senses danger that well. Now, compared to Mustafi, I don't think he makes glaring mistakes like them, but he makes subtle mistakes. And I think that's potentially limiting his game. Now, obviously, the life of a centre-back, it can develop much later than the life of a striker or a midfielder, for example. So he has got time. I think he's going to be a squad player next season. He will definitely start the season at centre-back because at the time of recording, Luiz hasn't signed a contract yet. There's rumours that he might get a new contract. But at this moment in time, he's leaving. And then obviously you would expect Mavropanos to leave in the summer. So that leaves us with 4 centre-backs. So that will be Holding, Saliba, Mari and Gabriel. And 2 of them are left centre-backs. So Holding will probably be the starter at right centre-back. Again, I don't know what's going to happen with Saliba, but part of me thinks that Mikel Arteta is going to find a way to sell him, which is so sad and so unfortunate, and I wouldn't do that because we need a young right-sided centre-half and we've got one at the club. So I think Holding will probably be a first-teamer next season. He will probably have a lot of minutes, probably be that leader in the dressing room. It will probably be more of the same as this season. I don't see us buying a centre-back in the summer, only if Luiz and Saliba go, because then you need one because you'll be left with 3 centre-backs. But hopefully he can improve, because I think the fan base are divided on him. I think some fans think he's really good, but some fans think he's really bad. And obviously the answer is always somewhere in the middle. I think he has mistakes in him that are not as noticeable as Mustafi, for example, but I don't think he's as bad as some people make out. And when he signed the new contract, I think a lot of people were very angry about it, whereas for me, I could understand the logic in it. So he will have a big role to play next season. So the final two questions are mainly the bigger landscape questions about the club. So from regular contributor at the Flying Gooner, he asks, is this a management issue or a squad issue, or are both partly to blame? And one from at Waynesworld_20, and he asks, how has the sudden realisation of just how bad this season is going felt? Now, the second question is regarding, I tweeted something this morning saying, I haven't really noticed how bad this season has actually gone. And it sort of surprised me that we have had 11 defeats. And if you told me 5 years ago that Arsenal would have 11 defeats in one season by February, I would be shocked. So it did feel bad, and I've sort of given up in terms of getting any high places in terms of the Premier League. I don't think we're going to get anywhere really far. I think when you think about it more and you just think, this is Arsenal, they're supposedly the third biggest club in England, and we are just accepting 11 defeats in a season by February as something that's acceptable. When it's not, of course it's not. But I just think because of the amount of bad decisions we've had and how bad it went last season under Emery, under Arteta, and how bad it's gone this season, that expectation has just been lowered, just because if you start, especially for me, if you start hoping or expecting top four, you're just always going to be disappointed. So you've had to lower those expectations. So it was a pretty sobering feeling in terms of realising, wow, we may actually finish the season with 15 defeats, which is astonishingly bad for a club of Arsenal's size. And to be honest, I don't know where this goes going forward. Now, this goes back to Jack's question about, is this a management issue or a squad issue, or both to blame? I think both are to blame in different circumstances. I think in terms of management, the way the first half of this season went is all on the management, because yes, the squad is bad, the players are bad, I get that, but you recognise that there was a gaping hole as in terms of creativity, and you didn't fix it. And it took until December before you changed your system to include the one creator that we had it at the club. I'm not counting Ozil because he wasn't registered at the time, and he's now gone. So that's on Arteta and the management, because it took so long for them to realise maybe we have a gaping hole between linking midfield and attack. Maybe this player can use it. And Smith Rowe has done very well. And he's changed our season, really. If not a spectacular change, he's at least made us a bit better going forward. But where I have it as a squad issue is in terms of balance. And I see loads of people say, oh, are you saying that Arsenal have a worse squad than West Ham, or worse squad than Everton, or Leicester, or Spurs? And my answer to that is probably not. I don't think we have a worse squad than these teams, but I think we have a worse balance than them. I think Arsenal firstly have too many forwards that are not compatible with each other. I think Arsenal also have 3 forwards in Aubameyang, Pepe and Martinelli, who are very low touch forwards, but not enough of the technically secure forwards, which has changed because you now have Saka and you now have Smith Rowe who can play in those forward roles. There's just not enough balance in the squad. And if I was revamping it, the attack would be something that I would look in terms of where can I improve. Go back to the Leeds game and Aubameyang looked really good up front behind two real creative players and one winger. And I think that's important for him, is to get him more creators around him so he can get more chances. And I saw Aubameyang get flack yesterday, and I don't agree with it, because Aubameyang is never a forward who's going to create chances himself. He's always a forward that has fed off chances, and if you're getting no chances in the game, then you are pretty redundant using Aubameyang. So in the summer, I would like to see our forward line refreshed, get some smarter players in. I don't know who these will be. That's for Edu and Arteta to figure out, but they have to address the balance of that front line. In terms of the centre of midfield, it's declined. I know we brought Partey in because the release clause, and he's obviously the best midfielder we've had in a decent amount of time. But you've got Xhaka, who's a perfectly serviceable midfielder. Has the mistake in him, but since the Burnley game, he's been pretty good. You have Dani Ceballos, who's not even our player, but he's inconsistent as well. Sometimes you think he's a great player, and sometimes you think he's really slow and sluggish. And then you have El Neni, and El Neni is a very average player who probably shouldn't be at Arsenal. You obviously have Guendouzi and Torreira on loan, but they are going to be sold. But my point is, Arsenal had more options last season, and they do not have those options this season. We have basically 3 centre mids. If one of them's injured like Partey is, then you're basically forced to play Ceballos and Xhaka every game. I don't think you could play El Neni in really any serious games. The midfield has been an issue for a time. There are no number 8s in that midfield. They're all just number 6s. Joe Willock, who's now on loan at Newcastle, and Dani Ceballos are the closest to number 8s. But I think Dani Ceballos is actually quite good as a 6, so that goes back to my fact. And Joe Willock, I don't know if he's technically good enough for an Arsenal side. Hopefully his Newcastle loan goes really, really well. So the squad is partly to blame, but again, it's only partly to blame because of the decisions that previous hierarchies made. They just weren't very smart decisions, and we're suffering from that, and we will continue to suffer from that. But like I try and say and try and give hope to Arsenal fans, football can change quickly. And after the Everton game, I thought Arteta was pretty close to getting sacked. Then the Chelsea game happened and we looked better. We done well against West Brom. We at least looked a bit more fun. And football can change. And maybe next season we can be aiming towards those top 6 places. I'm not going to hold my breath towards it, but who knows? But thanks for your question, guys. And I've rambled on a bit long here, but if you want to ask me any questions at AFC Met, I'll usually put a tweet out after the game and then one before I record. But all concentration now goes on to Thursday. That Benfica game is huge. It makes or breaks our season, really. Yes, it's only the round of 32, but hopefully we can get a good result. But until then, come on, you Gunners.
Well, it's broken Kanu's way, and Hui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?